Let me ask you something. What if your backyard or your patio or that sad little patch of dirt next to your driveway could pay you back this summer? Not in a fantasy world, but in a real, actual groceries that you don't have to buy at the store. Because here's the thing, a lot of people think gardening is, well, expensive. And honestly, they're not wrong if you do it the wrong way. But if you do it smart, a simple beginner setup can realistically produce hundreds of dollars worth of vegetables in a single season. And I'm not talking about quitting your job and becoming a farmer. I'm talking about one raised bed, a few good crops, a simple plan, and a little patience, which, fair warning, is the one thing you can't buy on Prime Day. So, welcome to Ancestry Lands. I'm Philip Davis, and you know what I'm doing. I'm breaking down how to grow $500 to $1,000 worth of vegetables this summer. Yes, which actually means, and the few things worth spending money on so your garden doesn't become very expensive salad that you'll never get to eat. So, let's dig in. Pun absolutely intended. Now, first, let's talk about what $500 to $1,000 worth of groceries or vegetables actually means, because I don't want you thinking that you're going to retire off your tomato plants. When gardeners throw out numbers like, I grew $800 worth of food this summer, they're usually talking about what the produce would cost at the grocery store, not pure profit. So if you grew $50 worth of tomatoes but spent $45 on supplies to grow them, your actual savings is close to $5 and a good story. That's why the goal here is not growing a lot of food. The goal is to grow the right fruit and food in a small way while keeping your costs low enough that the garden actually works in your favor. Think of it less like a farm and more like a slow cooker. You put the right ingredients in, you give it time, and it pays you back without you having to stand over it every single minute. Unless you're the kind of person who lifts the lid every 10 minutes, I do that honestly, in which we need to talk. So, how do you actually hit those numbers? These are three rules, and you remember nothing else from the video. Remember these. Rule number one, grow what's expensive. I'm talking about tomatoes, peppers, cucumbers, fresh herbs. Have you looked at the price of fresh basil at the grocery store lately? You're basically paying for like just one bunch of leaves, and it's made of cashmere. Growing your own herbs alone can save you surprisingly a large chunk of change over a full summer, and they don't take much space at all. Rule number two, grow what you actually eat. This one sounds obviously, but you'd be amazed at how many people plant a dozen zucchini plants because they were on sale and then spend August desperately leaving bags of zucchini on their neighbors' porches. Grow the stuff your family actually eats and puts on their plates, because that's the fastest way to lose money in the garden is growing food that goes bad in your fridge while you forget about it. Rule number three, keep your costs low and your yields high. Now, that's a little bit difficult, but there's a reason people joke about $64 tomato. And it's because it's very easy to spend more on your garden than you ever will get back out of it. The goal is to grow a lot of food without buying every gadget, every raised bed kit, every fancy soil amendment you see online. Focus and keep it simple. More than that in a minute, but now let's talk about the setup because you don't need a huge space to make this work. One of the most beginner friendly approaches out there is something called square foot garden. The idea is simple. Instead of planting long rows like traditional farm, you divide your garden bed into squares, each one square foot. You plant each square based on the size of the plant. Plant big plants like tomatoes get one per square. Medium plants like peppers, maybe one or two. Smaller things like lettuce, beets, you can fit 4 to 9, even 16 per square, depending on the variety. A standard starting point is a 4 by 4 raised bed. That's a 16 square foot total. It sounds small, but don't let that size fool you. A well planned 4 by foot bed is genuinely capable of producing serious, and I say serious amounts of food when you fill it with the right crops. Again, right crops. Here's a simple crop mix that you can get started. We'll call it your money bed. Tomatoes in the back, since they get tall and need support. Peppers next to them. They love the same warm conditions. Cucumbers on a trellis along one side, because trellising, though vertically, will get you more cucumbers without needing more ground. Grow up, not out. Space a square or two of leafy greens in the front because they grow fast and you can harvest them again and again, and they'll be easier to get to. And herbs, basil, parsley, chives tucked into the edges and corners where they'll fill in without crowding. Anything else? Nope, that's it. That's your money bet. Nothing fancy, nothing overwhelming, just a smart mix of high value crops in a small but manageable space. Now, here's the part that most beginners miss, and honestly, the biggest difference between someone who grows a little food to someone who grows a lot of food from the same amount of space. It's called succession planting, and I've done videos on that before, and it's a cheat code of the vegetable garden. The idea is simple. When one crop is done, you don't leave that space empty. You plant something else, and then something else after that, hence the term succession. So instead of one harvest per season, you get two or three on the same ground. Early in the season, before it gets really hot, you plant a cool weather crop. Lettuce, carrots, beets, spinach are good examples. They grow fast, taste great, and they don't like the heat. And then when summer kicks in, those crops are done and you transition to warm season plants. Your tomatoes, peppers, cucumbers take over and start producing through the heart of the summer. Then, as things start to cool down towards fall, you squeeze in one more round of greens before that season wraps up. 3 rounds of production, same bed. Same 16 square feet. That's that 4 by 4 that we talked about. And that's how small gardens start producing big gardens. It's not magic, it's just planning, which, unlike some things in a garden, is completely free. All right, now let's talk about the part of the gardening that no one really wants to hear. And that's how not to spin yourself into a hole before you've grown a single thing. Because here's the truth, you can absolutely ruin your garden's return on investment or your ROI before you even plant a seed just by buying too much stuff up front. I like to call this the inspired Sunday afternoon at the garden center problem. You go in for one tomato plant and you come out with $300 lighter in your wallet and a little statue of a frog holding a watering can. We've seen it all before. So let's talk about how you keep those costs under control. Start with seeds whenever you can. Seeds are dramatically cheaper than buying starter plants, and I will have a link in my description section about where you can get a whole bunch of seeds for a very cost effective price. You can also look at your public libraries, which my wife has gotten some for before. And starting seeds take a little time and attention early on, but the savings add up fast. You don't overbuild your setup. You don't need an elaborate, expensive raised bed system to grow vegetables. Plants don't care about aesthetics, they care about sun, water, decent soil, and consistency. And a simple setup meets those needs, it will produce just as well as a fancy one. Start small, do it well, expand afterwards. And if you want to choose crops at the store, well, you can do it at and preserve. You're not trying to hit big numbers, but if you do, you can't afford to let that food go to waste. Crops that freeze well like peppers, green beans, tomatoes help stretch your seasons. Harvest well past the last frost, and that's extra grocery savings. You don't need to work any harder now. I'm not going to pretend that the garden costs $0 because it doesn't. But here's a few things genuinely worth investing, especially when prices drop during summer sales. Here's the key, spend money on things that protect your yield and save you time, not things that look cool and flat on lay on a photo. The simple trellis system works, worth growing your cucumbers or tomatoes. Getting them up off the ground increases your harvest, reduces disease, and makes picking way easier. Vertical space is free. Remember, grow up, not out. So it's basically free real estate. Basic pruners or some saw plant ties or clips are genuinely useful. They cost almost nothing. Keep your plants tidy and supported means a real difference in production, and tools pay for themselves. A simple watering timer and a basic drip system is one of the best things a beginner can buy. Inconsistent watering is one of the common reasons vegetable gardens underperform. The timer costs very little, takes 20 minutes to set up, and removes one of the biggest variables between a good harvest and a disappointing one. And finally, when you don't skip that soil and fertilizing basics, your plants cannot produce heavy harvests if they're running on empty. Again, they need nutrients, quality potting mix, and raised bed soil, plus a simple fertilizer routine is not an option if you really want good output. That's the list, not 30 things, it's just 4 things. Everything else is optional. You can decide later if you actually need it. So let's bring it all together. 500 to $1,000 worth of vegetables in one summer. Genuinely, yes, but not everyone will hit the top end of that range in their first season. This is a long plan, and that's okay. With high value crops, a space efficient setup, succession planning, and control costs, you can absolutely grow more food than you expected and save real money in the process. The goal isn't perfection, it's to turn a small space into something that produces food week after week all summer long and save you when you're hitting the grocery store because you're buying that food, growing that food instead of buying it. But Steady, reliable food when you're actually picking and eating. And honestly, that feels pretty good, especially when you realize tomato on your sandwich came from your backyard. If you're new to Ancestry Lands and our channel, I'd love for you to stick around, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss what's coming up next. And we have more beginner friendly garden content on the way. And I want to help you actually succeed out there, not just watch videos about succeeding and dropping a comment below. I really want you to be successful. Now tell me, what are you planning to grow this summer? Or are you just starting out? Tell me what's holding you up, and I read the comments and I will answer your questions from time to time. See you in the next one, and thanks for watching.
Most people don't need motivation, they need better information. Owning land, growing food, and becoming more self reliant often sound complicated, mostly because they're rarely explained clearly. Ancestry Lands focuses on the practical side of independence by talking about what land ownership actually costs, what works in real backyards and small parcels. Because independence means getting freedom and security, and land just happens to do both. If you prefer planning over panic, subscribe to Ancestry Lands for information you can actually use.